Welcome friends, Patrina here with Homegrown Florida, and I know that you are tired of low yields in your garden because I was tired of low yields in my garden. Do you want to increase your harvest and get the most out of your garden? Well, in this video we're going to be discussing exactly how to pick the right varieties for your climate that will help increase your yield and make your garden experience way more successful. The first step to increasing your garden yield is by choosing the right varieties. It's important to consider your climate and your growing conditions. This includes your microclimate. A microclimate is just the special conditions that exist in your specific garden. The U.S. has several different climate zones ranging from really cool and dry to hot and humid. Each zone has specific temperature ranges, rainfall patterns, and growing seasons that affect plant growth and development. I'm on the border of 9A and 9B. My microclimate leans more towards the zone of 9A, but this is because I live in a higher elevation. Well, a higher elevation for Florida, that is. I also have a lot of trees around me and a constant crosswind, so that the microclimate tends to be cooler, but it also means I have more wind that can damage my plants if I don't support them well, especially vining plants or tomatoes. Even though my climate is a bit cooler than others in the same zone, I am still growing in Florida, so it's still very hot and humid from spring to fall. When I'm choosing seeds and plants to grow in my garden, I rely heavily on a few different resources. First and foremost, your local extension office is an amazing resource. I don't know why, but I was hesitant to reach out to them when I first started gardening. I guess because I felt like really kind of uneducated and I didn't really know what to ask. But when I finally did reach out, they were so above and beyond my expectations. I usually just email them and include pictures, and they are always so helpful and understanding. And they were super fast with responses. I'll add the link to the site that has all their emails in the description below, but you can also call them if you would rather speak to them. Another resource I love and use every single month is the UF website. UF has done, and that's the University of Florida, has done an amazing job with the home garden space. They do have videos and online meetings, but I can pretty much find whatever info I need from their website pages, including when to start which plants, what varieties are best to grow, and they are always the first place I go to when I need to research fruit trees I want to grow. Another resource I really love is floridagardening.com, which has a lot of detail on vegetable varieties. When I first started out, I bought their season packs of heirloom seeds, which includes a bunch of different vegetables, and all of those varieties that are there are proven to work here. These are a great place to start out if you are a beginner. If you have a little bit more experience on your belt, then start exploring varieties that thrive in hot and humid conditions. I look for varieties that originate from Eastern Asia, Central and South America, or ones that have been developed or originate in the Southeast United States. Some of my favorite examples are things like Seminole pumpkins, Everglade tomatoes, Florade tomatoes, the Georgia candy roasted squash, Cubanella peppers, Georgia southern collards, Texas Grand X onions. If you can find the origin to a particular variety, you can guess if it might do well here. These are all things that I have grown in my Florida garden, and they have all done well. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button for me if this video is helpful for you and your garden. Another thing to consider when selecting varieties is its disease resistance. Lots of vegetables have been bred over a long period of time to be naturally resistant to diseases. The plants do this in several different ways. One example is with Seminole pumpkins. They are resistant to powdery mildew, but it's not because they don't get it. It's more around the way the plant grows. It crawls along the ground, and every feet or two where the vine touches the ground, it will put down new roots through that vine. And because it does that, if one portion of the vine gets a lot of powdery mildew, the plant relies on all those other root points to keep the rest of the vine alive. It's a very smart plant. The other way plants can be resistant is if they have been bred for certain characteristics. The cool thing about this method is you can do this even in your own garden. I've been growing a pear tomato for several years now, and I only saved the seeds from the plants that held out from blight the longest. Over time, your plants from those seeds will get better and better. It's kind of, well, it reminds me of like breeding dogs for specific traits. The best working dogs end up being bred to try to keep that same high performance in the line. It doesn't always work, or it can take decades to do, but eventually by being very selective, you begin making small steps towards those traits that are more desirable. Same thing has happened with vegetable varieties. Then there's hybrids, hybrid vegetables. Hybrids are kind of like the selective breeding we were discussing a second ago, but with hybrids they achieve a certain disease resistance by breeding two different varieties to make a new variety through cross-pollination. The problem with this type is that the child from the plant will not be the same as the parent. Because it hasn't been bred over a long enough period of time, you get a huge amount of variation with the child plant. So the only way hybrids work is if you breed the same two different varieties to create the new variety each and every time. This is a very difficult thing to do in a home garden just because you have to isolate the plants so they don't accidentally get crossbred with some other plant. You would also need access to the original two plants, which is usually something that is considered proprietary by the seed companies. I like using hybrids, but the biggest drawback for them is the fact that you can't or you shouldn't save the seeds, and I like saving seeds. So I like hybrids for vegetables where I just can't seem to find a variety that works well where I live. My best example is broccoli. I can grow heirloom varieties here, but the heads are small, and with a hybrid, I can grow much larger heads. So for me, it's worth it to buy the hybrid seeds. Another factor to consider when you're choosing varieties is your soil type. Soil here in Florida is a challenge. We have such sandy soil that doesn't really hold nutrients. Another challenge is the issue of root knot nematodes in our sandy soil. The best way to resolve this is to add a crazy amount of organic material to your existing soil. And what I mean by organic material is anything that was once living but is now dying or decaying. Leaves, branches, grass clipping, paper, cardboard, wood chips, plant debris, food scraps. These are all the same things you can use to build compost, but if you are not yet on the composting journey, no worries. Start laying these things in your beds and let them break down over time. You can also add manures like chicken, cow, rabbit, and worm castings if you have access to this. All these organic materials will naturally reduce root knot nematodes, but the other thing you can do if this is just a really big issue in your garden is to grow resistant varieties of vegetables, or vegetables that are not really impacted by root knot nematodes naturally. There are several tomato and pepper varieties that are resistant. Then you have things like broccoli and cauliflower that are not normally affected by root knot nematodes. There are lots that are available, but it does take a lot of research. The last thing you want to think about is pH levels. Most vegetables want a pH around somewhere between 6 and 7. Thankfully, many parts of Florida already fall into this range unless you're growing in an area with like lots of pine trees. The pine can make the soil more acidic, in which case you will need to use something like garden lime to adjust the pH, or better yet, try to grow away from the pines. pH gets a bit trickier when it comes to fruit. I'm thinking specifically of my blueberries. I have blueberries and they have been struggling for a while, and it just now occurred to me that the pH might not be acidic enough since these plants need a pH around, I think it's like 4.2 to 5. So I had to add a soil acidifier. If I'd been keeping up with this better, I might have been able to do this without buying an amendment by using things like pine shaving, coffee, even some people use vinegar. Also, compost can help with this, but since I just wasn't paying attention and I was concerned with how bad the plants looked, I purchased an organic soil acidifier to kind of speed this process up. By selecting varieties that are well suited to your climate and growing conditions, you can increase your chance of a very large and successful harvest. So don't be afraid to experiment and try new varieties. With a little research and some planning, you can create a garden that thrives and produces an abundant harvest. If you've been struggling with your yields in the garden, make sure to watch this video next. Happy gardening, guys!